Welcome, everyone, to Ladder Daily Digest. We honor creators, and today we have Jon Ogden with Uplift Kids. He has started, what would you call it, an organization?
Yep.
To help inform children of philosophies and potential landing spots, maybe, or whatever, for how someone could feel about their existence on Earth, I'll say. Is that a good enough synopsis?
Yeah, timeless values for families. Talking about kindness, humility, grit, whether you would label yourself as a believer or a non-believer.
Okay, so thanks for being on the show. And let's start out with your story, how you got just prior to thinking about this project.
Yeah, so I joined a group that was it's a mindfulness community. It's called Lower Lights. And I was part of a 9-month program where we met 4 times over the course of the 9 months with the same 20 people. And we explored like mindfulness, adult development, and concepts like that. And we really liked what we were doing as part of the community. But we started to wonder, like, what would it look like if we could expand some of this for kids?
Right.
And a lot of the motivation was around faith crisis, faith shift, and looking for ways to approach spirituality through a more expansive lens that could bring some structure still for kids to be able to have a foundation in their life that they might not otherwise have.
Right. And so tell us a little bit about your background. Where are you from and what was your upbringing like?
Yeah, I'm from Utah, Springville, Utah. And my background is, LDS. And I served a mission in California when I was on a mission.
What part?
Ventura, California.
Okay.
And when I was on my mission, I encountered a lot of people who knew things about my religion that I didn't know. And at first I had the posture of always correcting them. No, that's wrong. You don't know what you're talking about.
Anti-Mormon lie.
Yeah. And then eventually on my mission, I found like, oh, some of these things that they're saying are actually valid. And it was a surprise. Definitely put me in a faith crisis as a missionary. And so,
was that just before the turn of the century?
It was 2002.
Okay.
Just after. And so I started studying more. And
while you're on your mission?
Yeah, the stuff, anything that I could get a hold of, I would read it and I would start asking more questions. And I like reached out to family members and like my high school psychology teacher who wasn't LDS, and I was, just trying to get help. And my high school psychology teacher like sent a letter back that was helpful. She said like, you've already committed to serve an LDS mission, and so you should finish it out.
So it was causing you enough concern where you were contemplating a change in direction while on your mission.
Yeah, it was pretty big, just like because the daily stress of having to go and tell people that what I believed when I was like very uncertain about what I believed was psychologically troubling. And it was very difficult, day in and day out. But eventually, I did decide, okay, so I have committed to do this, and so I'm going to stick with it.
And did you like in your mind set up a framework where how you can continue, like you set yourself boundaries, sort of guidelines, like I'm not going to necessarily push back. I'm going to accept somebody's experience and just say, oh, that's interesting, and just move forward. And then just for your own mental health, we'll say.
Right. Yeah. I took on a posture of listening more often than I had before, of saying like, okay, I actually don't know. And so like, I'm willing just to have a conversation with people. And if they want to be baptized, great. But I'm more interested in just like the connection and hearing from them. And so sometimes I would just like get us into situations where we just listen to like a Muslim person or a Hindu person or a evangelical Christian talk about their faith. And that was the conversation. Yeah, be curious. Exactly.
And so while you were on your mission, did you like think about college towards the end of your mission?
I was already thinking about college. Yep, that's right.
Had you done like a year of college before your mission,
Nope,
or
I went
okay?
right after high school.
And what were your options as you approached the end of your mission?
For college,
Hmm.
I just went to BYU. So
Because
I
it was definitely going to be a low cost as a tithe paying ex missionary. You were going to have, it was going to be the most affordable option.
Sure, yeah, and it was a great school. I was planning to go to UVU at first, Utah Valley University, and then BYU offered me a scholarship, and so I was like, okay, yeah,
Sure.
I'll go there. And yeah,
So you
and so
continued your studies and BYU requires you to take church history classes and church, I don't know, what else would you call them?
not very many church history classes, but
Like
yeah,
Book of
maybe they do.
Mormon, church
Yeah,
related classes,
there was a
religious
Book of
studies.
Mormon. Yeah, religious studies. There was a Book of Mormon class, and there was a I'm pretty sure I took a Doctrine and Covenants class too. But yeah,
Hmm.
aside from those, yeah.
And how did you choose your major?
Um, I was I got back and I was thinking that sorry, I thought my apologies. I got back and I was thinking that I would be a lawyer, and so I started doing English, and then it's just like maybe a semester or two. I was like, no, I think I'm just going to be an English major and figure out what to do with that afterward. And that was
Teacher
kind of
or author? What were you thinking? Teacher or writer?
I wasn't sure. Yeah, I was just like I just really like English. I just like
Wherever it
looking at
took you,
literature.
you were going to
Yeah.
just go.
Yep. Yep, that's right. And so
Did you have like a minor in certain literature period or anything?
no. I I did though do a master's degree in rhetoric, and so I was
Okay.
interested in rhetoric and composition
But was
after.
there a literature period that you were most interested in that you read?
I read pretty broadly at the time. Let's see, I was interested in poetry. I would write poetry and study different poets, and so
Yeah.
interested in the romantic poets, and eventually interested in the modernist poets as well.
For me, it was all about Mark Twain.
Yeah, Mark Twain's so good. He's amazing.
And when he would say stuff that's like atheistic or anti-Mormon, I would just like, oh, he just doesn't know.
Sure, sure.
He wasn't able to figure it out. And
He's
so what'd you
great.
do with your English degree right after?
I taught at BYU adjunct faculty, and so the whole time I kind of like shelved a lot of the religious questions and just kind of went with life. You know, I was
Mhm.
dating and going to school, doing homework, and so I just wasn't focused on the big questions. And then I started teaching at BYU adjunct faculty, and it wasn't until I switched to what's called instructional design, which is like making curriculum
Okay.
after doing adjunct faculty, that I started having a little bit more space to revisit some of those questions that I'd asked on my mission. But yeah, that's what I did after is I did faculty or curriculum design.
So were you considering with that possibly school administration at some point as well?
No, I
You
didn't.
still
I don't
wanted to
think.
be in the trenches. You wanted to be where the
Yeah, I want to be
learning
a writer. Yeah,
where the learning
writer.
happened.
Yeah. Uh huh. Yep.
Okay. And so then what'd you do after teaching?
Instructional design, which is the curriculum creation that was for a company, and then I did what's called content marketing, which is writing for a tech company.
Writing for a tech company. Can you say the tech?
Sure. Yeah, I worked for MX and Workfront are two companies that I worked for in tech. They're
So
just Utah companies.
so describe the type of writing, like manuals.
So MX is banking software, and so I would write about bank technology, and it was like not writing that was selling the product, but it was writing about the
informing
industry.
informing about the industry
Yep. So being like an
trends and
industry
stuff,
voice. Yep. Exactly.
right?
Yep. And then Workfront is project management software. So it was like work management software, writing about that industry. So those are the two industries that I wrote about.
And then how many years later did you do the 9 month program that you mentioned earlier?
I did that in um, 2019.
So how many years were you with your other job? Like 10 years?
Between the two, 7 years.
7 years. So you're well established in doing, we'll say technical / corporate writing or whatever.
Right. Yep.
And then what caused you to go to this program? And say the name of it again.
Lower Lights. That is, the program is called Spectra, and it's offered through Lower Lights. And I found Lower Lights right when it launched. Thomas McConkie is the guy who leads it, and I met him in like 2015 and started doing mindfulness stuff with him, and was pretty much like committed to doing stuff with Lower Lights, and so I've been doing stuff with them ever since. And so it was the first time that they offered the 9-month program. I'd basically done everything that Lower Lights offered. And so it was another thing, I did 7-day silent retreats, 3-day retreats, 1-day retreats. And then they said, here's this 9-month thing. And so I signed up for that. And so the reason that I was so interested in it is that it was an expansive approach to spirituality that worked whether somebody was a believer or a non-believer. It could really had room for people of different beliefs to have spiritual experience together. That's what appealed to me about it.
Like I remember growing up, like ancient Chinese proverbs were instructional, right? Aesop's fables, right? That their life's lessons are within these paradigms, these avenues of exploring human experience. And there doesn't necessarily have to be any dogma attached to it.
Right.
It could be something you can include all the way or partially into your own personal philosophy without anybody looking askance at you.
Yep, that's right.
And so at what point did you start thinking the formulation of Uplift Kids?
It was pretty late.
During your 9 months?
Yeah, during the 9 months. Pretty late into that phase, maybe like 6 months or 7 months in, we started thinking about it. And then it was, we kind of went from there.
How many different names were on your page of potential names for the organization?
We ran through a lot very early on, but we landed on Uplift Kids before we created anything. So.
Okay. So, because, you could say meaningful dialogue with children around world philosophies, and that just wouldn't be a good enough attractive title or URL or anything like that.
Yep.
And so did you see what the landscape was, what other companies were doing in the area, or was like nothing like it?
There's honestly nothing quite like it, which is both good and bad for us because there's not an established category, and so it can be hard for people to understand what we're doing. On the other hand, there aren't big competitors, and so
you're a pioneer, which makes it hard, but there's room for growth.
Yep, that's right.
You don't have to steal clients away from anybody. You just have to inform and educate people enough to realize that this is something that has value for for children and adults as well, right?
Yep.
And so as you're formulating this, you I guess you want to do a nonprofit. And so did you do it that way?
Right now we're in LLC. So we're kind of tabled that for now. We just let's just get an organization going. And we still haven't decided if we're going to ultimately be a nonprofit or not. But it's just
because on one hand, if it's a good business model, like the proverbial build a better mousetrap and people will beat a path to your door, that is sort of like a double-edged sword. It's the hope for dream for all entrepreneurs, but it doesn't always happen that way. There's lots of things that have to happen. But you're thinking if it's a viable product and you can show that, then it has a place in the marketplace.
Yep.
And so once you start it, what comes first? The website? I mean, the behind the scenes. What's the behind the scenes thought process before you start actually talking to other people about it
Yeah,
outside?
so we started talking about it with the cohort that we were working with at what's called Spectrum, that 9-month program that I talked about. We presented it all to them. And then we found 6 prototype families. We said, hey, we're doing this thing. Would you be interested in trying it out? And so we had about 6 lessons at that point. And we said, hey, go through these lessons and see what your family says. Like, do your kids like it? Do you like it? What do you think? And
So you get feedback, and it's
yep,
also proof of concept.
yep, exactly. And so we took all their feedback, made a ton of iterations, and then we found 36 families that we wanted to work with to do the same thing. We did a round of iterations based on all of their feedback, and then we launched. I think it was about 2021 or January 2021, and we launched with just 20 lessons and let people sign up so they could sign up for an annual membership. And we just continue to make iterations and make new lessons since then.
And so did you get upliftkids.org right away, but didn't do anything
Yeah.
with it for a long time? Is you
We
just
got,
share the website, the URL?
yeah, no, we got upliftkids.org, and that's when we were starting to do the prototype with 36 families.
Okay. So as soon as the second iteration or whatever.
Yeah. And then we asked a bunch of people and did calls with them to see what they thought of the website and how they use the website. Just watched them interact with the website and made changes based on what they said.
So I'm curious, was the 6 family test feedback almost as good as the 36 family feedback, or
Yeah,
was one way better than the other?
no, both were good. They both pointed to trends. Like, we saw the same comments come up consistently. We said, okay, we need to change that. We need to fix that. And so it's helpful.
And was there any like glaring hole in the program where people say, how come you don't have a segment on this?
Yeah, people would say that they wanted lessons on X, Y, and Z. At this point, we have almost 3 years worth of lessons. And so if a family did every single lesson in our lesson library once a week, they did one lesson a week for 3 years. It would take them 3 years to finish it all up.
And so, and you say one lesson once a week.
Yep.
So did family home evening play part of that?
Yeah, it was a model. Yeah, it was like,
The thought of it.
yeah.
And it's funny because right when family home evening is dropping off the face of Mormondom,
right.
you're coming up with something perfect for it on one hand.
Yeah, family evening or home church. What we found was that there are a lot of people, whether they're in or out of religion, who if they're in religion, they no longer want the official manual. They feel some dissatisfaction with the official manual, and they're looking for something that's a little bit more expansive, but they still want to participate in their religion. If they're out of religion, then they feel like, well, what do I give my kids? That's the biggest question that we get. What do I do for my kids? I've left religion, but what do I do for my kids? And so this is a way for you to give kids like some sense of structure, some sense of values, as a family, have conversations as a family, so that you can feel like there is something that you gather around, something that you're for, not just against if you've left religion.
Right. It's part of there is kind of a trend of people that have been sort of in the deconstruction phase of Mormonism, and they've started a podcast. And I know a couple people that have decided to like switch streams or whatever and talk about reconstruction instead
Yep.
of deconstruction.
Yeah.
And so,
Who comes to mind? I'm curious.
there's a TikToker named Robert Tobler. He had a TikTok called "President, Please Help Me," where as he was realizing that there were lots of questions to be asked, like, why was this taught to me when I was young, and now they're saying this, right? Or other problems. It could even be like DNA or other issues. And he became pretty popular TikToker, and he's realizing it's not overall the best thing for even his mental health. And so he's taking a little break and he's resetting. And then there's Megan Connor, who she has Third Verse and another, I can't remember the name of her main show, but she, it's something about midlife, contemplations. And so,
interesting.
So she never was necessarily kicking against the pricks or anything, but she did that all privately and then decided to do this overall, some type of situation where anybody that's changing their beliefs or getting out of a bad relationship could benefit from, help in that way.
That's great.
So how do people find you most of the time?
Word of mouth. People use our lessons and then they're like, hey, have you heard of Uplift Kids? Or somebody posts in like a Facebook group. I'm looking, I don't know what to do for my kids. What do I do now? And then people are like, oh, Uplift Kids, Uplift Kids, Uplift Kids. They'll just mention it because they like just the simple get together. Let's talk about kindness this week. Let's talk about grit. Let's talk about emotional intelligence. And so, that's the biggest way that people find us is that they'll hear from friends and family that there's something that can provide that structure for them.
And then how many podcasts like myself have you been on, you think, in the last year or so?
It's hard to count. Yeah, quite a few. Yeah, I don't know if I could count them off the top of my head.
Does a couple come to mind?
That I've been on?
Yeah.
We were on Noah Ruscetta's podcast. He does secular Buddhism, Mormon Stories Thrive podcast with Margie DeLynn and John DeLynn. Let me think of other ones that would be relevant. I was on Parenting Forward, which is a post-evangelical podcast. Another one with a guy named Dan Koch, who is also post-evangelical. There are quite a few. Like I keep naming, but
is the future having like your own podcast or TikTok, or do you do Instagram things and try to promote what you're doing that way?
We're on Instagram.
Instagram. Yeah. Little vignettes, little mini tips of the day kind of a thing.
Yeah, that's right.
That's pretty good. So somebody finds you and they're looking at your website. What do they do? What's their process? They just research more, or they click a button? What happens?
Yeah, so we offer a free lesson. So here, try this free sample lesson. And so people just give their email, check out the free sample lesson, see if it's a good fit or not. If it's a good fit, then we say, hey, there's a 2-week free trial for the annual membership. So try it out for 2 weeks. If you'll get access to what we offer. If your family likes it, if you get value from it, great. In 2 weeks, we'll charge you the $99 for the year, and you'll have access for the year. And
so I'm adding to this page one of the pages of your website. So I see this free trial button.
Yep.
And I don't know, do you get feedback on your website, or do you have do they let you know metrics, like what pages do people land on the most? What do they spend the most time on?
Yep.
And so that helps you. And then I guess you have the FAQs, which for some reason I haven't seen that as a tab in a long time, but I just haven't looked at it. I think it just became ubiquitous, right, to me.
Sure.
And so I think I can make this more of a full screen, at least bigger. So they sign up and then they go into lessons once they've signed up.
Yep.
And I suppose they can start anywhere, do hodgepodge, grab what they want. Yeah,
we offer a calendar program, so you could follow the calendar program if you want, where we email out on Sunday mornings, like, here's lesson option A and lesson option B for the week. You can choose. Or you can just say, hey, let's look at the lesson library and what do we want to talk about today? Let's talk about honesty, and so they'll start talking about honesty. We also offer like a daily uplift. So that is a small snippet for the day that you could read at breakfast or at bedtime. So there are lots of ways that a family can go about making this work for them.
So I'm on the values. So were these like all the values that you had in your 9-month program, or did you take some or add some to it?
Added a lot, yeah.
Okay, because kids have a little bit different experience than adults do.
Yep.
Is there any order to these?
Not in this view. This is just the lesson library. So they're just grouped by topic. But the order is in our program where we have stuff that is like related to the months and related to the seasons so that a family could incorporate that into what they naturally do.
From my experience of growing up in the 60s, kids were bad for expressing their emotions most of the time, unless it was happy. If you cried, it was go to your room, right?
Yep.
If you were depressed, it was, I'm sorry, I can't help you.
Yeah.
If you were angry, you're put on timeout, right?
Uh-huh.
There could have been hugging for grief, but shame, I remember dealing with shame all by myself. I guess that's part of the shame process, we'll say. And so anyhow, that's what else was I going to do on the website? I was going to look at and I'm probably going to cut out some of this. I wanted to scroll to your team, how you gathered your team. So let's see, here's your team in alphabetical order. So how long ago is this team been complete?
The 4 of us that you just saw, me, Amanda, Michelle, and Drew, were all part of that 9-month program. Okay. So that's the team. And you can see Amanda has a degree in school psychology. She's a school psychologist. Drew has background in business. And Michelle is a therapist.
John has some bona fides.
Yeah, the thing that I tend to bring is like a sense of curriculum design and curriculum creation, and then I have a deep interest in like the world's wisdom traditions, and so infusing the lessons with stuff from Taoism and Buddhism and Stoicism and
can I ask how old your sons are?
14 and 9.
Okay, so they're right in the ballpark.
Yep.
Are they tired of the lessons, or are they? Do you surprise them with increasingly good content?
They're the guinea pigs for the lesson, so they do everything first, and so we are using them as like feedback, a source of feedback, and so it's mixed, but it's good. We still do it every week, and it's part of the family time.
Yeah, I remember at my dad's funeral, he often told jokes. And I noticed that my brothers and I were more into spontaneous humor compared to like joke telling. And so my part of the eulogy, I said, if you knew my dad, you heard a million jokes. And if you were related to him, you heard him each a million times. So do you change up the program a little bit and ask your kids what they think of the new?
Each week is different. Every week is a new topic. We vary the approach, do different activities, different curated videos. And so it tends to be pretty straightforward.
And I'll have to give a shout out to Rebecca Biblioteca and the Good Book Club. And that's where I'm sure I already had heard of Uplift Kids, but you were able to have on the last episode a little bit more time explaining. And I thought, I should do a show on Uplift Kids.
Yeah, Rebecca's great.
And who was the author at the time of the?
Britt Hartley.
Britt. I have Britt's book somewhere, but I don't know where it is. But anyhow, is there anything else you want to share about like what things are like right now and what's the future for? Does it seem like it's going to be an ongoing enterprise for the foreseeable future?
It does, for the foreseeable future. So we just did a 3-day parenting retreat. We brought 20 people in, and we did it in Shoals Valley, Oregon. It's outside of Portland, and it was really wonderful. We also do a family camp where we bring people in and do stuff in person. Both those are very exciting. They're difficult to do and expensive to pull off, but they've both been like really energizing and really beautiful. And so we'll continue doing that. We're wrapping up our curriculum at the end of this year. And so 3 years is enough. We will continue to optimize and maybe once in a while do a new lesson here and there, but we have the curriculum kind of set at this point. And so that opens up the possibility of many other angles that we can explore, including like what might some family rituals look like and how could we help families have good traditions and rituals that they feel comfortable with and that feel enlivening for them. And so there are a lot of opportunities for us going forward. And we feel like we have a good base started from which to experiment.
Do you think there's opportunities in the future to work with like school districts and have?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, we had the Utah Board of Education reach out and say that they're starting to get interested in spirituality because the data is pointing to spiritual health being really important for kids. And it's not spirituality tied to any specific religion, but just spiritual health generally. And so we're very interested in seeing what that looks like.
Yeah, I remember when my son was attending high school in the late 2000s. He graduated in 2009 or 10, I think. And he was popular. He was a quarterback of the football team, and he was called the Stormin' Mormon at the time. And but I would ask a lot of his friends, or just things would come up in conversation, like, do you go to a church, or what do you think, or you like, have you heard of Noah's Ark? And hardly any of his friends went to church or had heard of any Bible stories or anything like that. And and on one hand, I was thinking, well, there's always philosophy, and and learning is okay. You don't have to be tied to a church or anything necessarily. But it did seem like there was going to be a growing gap for what kids' experience is going to be going forward. So I guess you got these dichotomy of the conservative, right-wing, dogmatic approach where people are doubling down on Jesus is coming soon, and the lack of God in the schools is evidence that the world is going to come to an end. And then this rise of the nuns, people who are spiritual but not religious, not attached to any specific church.
Right.
So anyhow, well, thanks for coming on our show. We wish you the best. I'll try to include, the link to your website and also some of your podcasts that you've been on, because to me, the rising tide lifts all boats, and everybody should collaborate and share each other's podcasts. And it doesn't hurt for people to, explore new things. And that's what, my show is about, is people exploring new viewpoints, new things, and enjoying people's creative journeys. So thanks a lot, and wish everybody, a happy rest of the year. Like and subscribe and all those good things, and check out Jon's Uplift Kids website and see if you know somebody that could use the materials that they prepared. All righty. Bye-bye.